Chapter 3: Origin of Disease, the correspondence of diseases with the spiritual world. All diseases appertaining to man have correspondence with the spiritual world, for whatever in the whole of nature has not correspondence with the spiritual world has no existence, having no cause from which it can exist, consequently from which it can subsist. The things which are in nature are mere effects. Their causes are in the spiritual world, and the causes of those causes, which are ends, are in the interior heaven. Diseases also have correspondence with the spiritual world, not indeed with heaven, which is the grand man, but with those who are in the opposite, thus with those who are in the hells. Diseases have correspondence with those who are in the hells, because they correspond to the lusts and passions of the mind. These, therefore, are the origins of diseases. The common origins of diseases are intemperances, luxuries of various kinds, pleasures merely corporeal, also envyings, hatreds, revenges, lasciviousness, which destroy a man's interiors. When these are destroyed, the exteriors suffer and draw him into disease, and thereby into death. That man is subject to death by reason of evils or on account of sin is well known to the Church. Thus also he is subject to diseases, for these are of death. All the infernals induce diseases, but with a difference, because all the hells are in the lusts and concupiscences. Concupiscences, I ain't heard of this one, of evil. Heaven, which is the grand man, keeps all things in connection and safety. Hell, as being in the opposite, destroys and rends all things asunder. Consequently, if the infernals are applied, they induce diseases. At length, death. But they are not permitted to flow in so far as into the solid parts of the body, or into the parts which constitute the viscera, organs, and members of man, but only into the lusts and falsities. When a man falls into disease, they then flow into such unclean things as appertain to the disease. That the case is thus has been given me to know by much experience, and this so frequently and of so long continuance as not to leave a doubt remaining, for evil spirits from such places have been often and for a long time applied to me, and according to their presence they induced pains and also diseases. It was shown me where they were, and what was their quality, and it was also told me whence they came. A certain spirit, who in the life of the body had been devoted to pleasures, and not willing to do good and be serviceable to anyone except for the sake of himself, was with me for some days, and appeared beneath the feet. When the sphere of his life was communicated to me, wherever he came, he inflicted some pain on the periostea and nerves there, as on the toes of the left foot. And when he was permitted to emerge, he inflicted pain on the parts where he was, especially on the periostea in the loins, also on the periostea of the breast beneath the diaphragm, and likewise on the inside of the teeth. When his sphere operated, it induced also a great oppression in the stomach. There exhaled a troublesome hest, which was collected from various hells, arising from lusts of various kinds, as from haughtiness, lasciviousness, adulteries, hatreds, revenges, quarrels, and fightings. When this heat acted upon my body, it instantly induced disease like that of a burning fever, but when it ceased to flow in, the disease instantly ceased. When a man falls into such disease, which he had contracted from his life, instantly an unclean sphere corresponding to the disease joins itself, and is present as the fomenting cause. That I might know for certain that this is the case, There were spirits from several hells present with me, who communicated the sphere of the exhalations thence arising, and as that sphere was permitted to act upon the solid parts of the body, I was seized with heaviness and pain, and even with disease corresponding thereto, which ceased in a moment. As those spirits were expelled, and lest any room should be left for doubt, this was repeated very many times. There are also spirits who infuse unclean colds, like those of a cold fever, which also it was given me to know by repeated experience. The same spirits also induce such things as disturb the mind. They likewise induce swoonings. There are certain spirits who not only have reference to the most viscid things of the brain, which are its excrementitious parts, but also have the art of infecting them as it were with poisons. When such spirits flock together, they rush within the skull, and thence by continuity even to the spinal marrow. This cannot be felt by those whose interiors are not open. To me it was given manifestly to feel their influence, and also their attempt to kill me, but in vain, because I was defended by the Lord. It was their intention to take away from me every intellectual faculty. I was very sensible of their operation, and also of a pain derived from it, which nevertheless presently ceased. I afterwards conversed with them, and they were forced to confess whence they came. They stated that they lived in dark forests, where they dare not offer any violence to their companions, because in such case their companions are allowed to treat them with the utmost severity. Thus they are kept in bonds. They are deformed, of a beastly countenance, and hairy. It was told me that such were those who in old time slew whole armies, as it is written in the word, for they rushed into the chambers of the brain of each individual, and occasioned terror, together with such insanity that one slew another. Such at this day are kept shut up within their hell, and are not let out. They have reference also to the fatal tubercles of the head within the skull. It was said that they rush within the skull, and thence by continuity even into the spinal marrow, but it is an appearance that the spirits themselves rush in, they being carried out by a way which corresponds to those spaces in the body which is felt as if the incursion were within. This is the effect of correspondence. There is a certain kind of spirits who, in consequences of their desire to have dominion and to be the sole rulers over all others, with a view to that, and excite, among others, enmities, hatreds, and combats. I have witnessed the combats and have been surprised, and on my asking who they are, I was told that they are spirits of the above description, and that they excite such things in consequence of their intention to rule alone, according to the maxim, divide and rule. It was also granted me to converse with them, and they immediately said that they governed all. But it was given me to answer them that they were insane if they seek to establish their rule by such means. Their speech was with rapidity of a current, because in the life of the body they had excelled in elocution. I was instructed that they are such as have reference to the thick phlegm of the brain, which by their presence they deprive of every principle of life, and induce torpor, whence come obstructions, from which arrive several diseases, and also numbness. It was observed that they were totally void of conscience, and that they made human prudence and wisdom to consist in exciting enmities, hatreds, and intestine combats, for the sake of bearing rule. Those who despise and ridicule the word in the letter, and especially those who despise and ridicule those things of the word which are in a deeper sense, consequently also the doctrinals which are derived from the word, and at the same time are not principled in any love towards their neighbor, but in the love of self, have reference to the visited things of the blood, which pervade all the veins and arteries, and contaminate the whole mass. When hypocrites who discourse holily concerning divine things with an affection of love concerning the public and their neighbor, testify what is just and equitable, and still have despised those things in their hearts, and have been ridiculed them, and have even ridiculed them, when these, I say, have been attended on me, and they were allowed to flow into the parts of the body to which they correspond from the apposite principle, they injected pain into the teeth, which upon their nearer approach was so severe that I could not endure it, and so far as they were removed, so far the pain ceased, which was shown repeatedly in order to remove all doubt. Among them was one whom I had known during his life in the body, on which account I conversed with him, and in proportion as he was present, so my teeth and gums were affected with pain. When he was lifted upwards to the left, a pain attacked the left jaw and the bone of the left temple, and penetrated even to the bones of the cheek. The most contumacious of all are those who during their life in the world appeared more just than others, and were at the same time in appointments of dignity. Hence, from each source they derived authority and influence, and yet believed nothing, and lived the life of self-love alone, being inflamed with intestine hatred and revenge against all who did not favor them and pay court to them, and especially against those who in any way opposed them. When they are applied to a man, they induce a great pain by weariness, which they inwardly excite, and increase continually, even to the highest degree of impatience, which induces such infirmity in the mind, and thence in the body, that the man can scarcely raise himself from his bed.